Possibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about something that has the power to completely transform the way you experience life. Possibilities. Not by changing your circumstances overnight. Not by removing every challenge. Not by giving you instant answers to every question. Possibilities. But by changing the lens through which you see everything. Most people go through life looking at events as isolated incidents. Possibilities. They see a blessing and call it luck. They face a setback and call it bad fortune. Possibilities. They encounter an unexpected delay and immediately assume something has gone wrong. Possibilities. They evaluate life based only on what they can understand in the moment. But there is a different way to live. Possibilities. When you train your mind to see God in everything, life begins to reveal a depth that was always there but often overlooked. Possibilities. You start to recognize that every season has meaning. Every encounter has purpose. Every challenge carries a lesson. Possibilities. Every blessing contains a reminder of His presence. The greatest battle many people face. Possibilities. Is not around them. It is within them. It is the battle of perception. Possibilities. Two people can walk through the same storm and come away with entirely different conclusions. One sees only loss, disappointment, and frustration. Possibilities. The other sees growth, preparation, and divine guidance. The difference is not the storm. The difference is how they choose to interpret it. Possibilities. Your mind is constantly searching for evidence. It looks for patterns. It forms conclusions. It builds beliefs. Possibilities. If you train your mind to focus only on problems, you will find problems everywhere. If you train your mind to focus only on fear, possibilities. Fear will become your constant companion. But when you train your mind to recognize God's hand at work, possibilities. Even in situations you do not fully understand, you begin to experience life with a deeper sense of peace and confidence. Possibilities. Consider the moments that did not make sense when they happened. The door that closed unexpectedly. The opportunity that slipped away. Possibilities. The relationship that ended. Plans that fell apart. At the time, those moments may have felt painful and confusing. Yet years later, many people look back and realize those very events protected them, redirected them, or prepared them for something greater than they could have imagined. What seemed like rejection was actually guidance. What seemed like loss was actually redirection. What seemed like an ending was actually the beginning of something new. This is what happens when you start viewing life through the perspective of faith rather than mere circumstance. Faith is not denying reality. Faith is recognizing that reality contains dimensions beyond what your eyes can currently see. There will be days when everything appears clear. Success comes easily. Relationships flourish. Opportunities open. During those moments, it is natural to see God's goodness. But the true test comes when life becomes difficult. Can you still trust when answers are delayed? Can you still believe when circumstances seem uncertain? Can you still recognize His presence when the path ahead appears unclear? A mature faith understands that God's activity is not limited to pleasant experiences. He is present in the victories and the valleys. He is working in the moments of celebration and the moments of waiting. Many people want explanations for everything. They want every question answered immediately. Yet some of the most important lessons in life are learned not through explanations, but through trust. Trust grows when you continue moving forward, even when you cannot see the entire picture. Imagine looking at a massive tapestry from the backside. You would see loose threads, knots, and patterns that appear random. Nothing would seem organized. Nothing would make complete sense. But if you could turn it around, you would discover a beautiful design. Life often feels like looking at the backside of the tapestry. We see fragments. God sees the complete picture. This understanding changes the way you abilities respond to uncertainty. Instead of assuming that confusion means abandonment, abilities, you begin to understand that not seeing the whole picture does not mean there is no picture. Abilities. You begin to trust that there is purpose even when you cannot yet perceive it. Abilities. Training your mind to see God in everything also changes the way you interact with people. Every person you encounter can teach you something. Abilities. Some people teach you through their wisdom. Others teach you through their mistakes. Some inspire you. Others challenge you. Abilities. Some encourage you to grow. Others reveal areas where you still need healing. Abilities. Nothing becomes wasted when you recognize that God can use every interaction to shape your character. Possibilities. Even disappointments become valuable because they reveal what truly matters. Possibilities. Even hardships become meaningful because they strengthen qualities that comfort never could. Patience develops in waiting. Possibilities. Courage develops in uncertainty. Character develops in adversity. Wisdom develops through possibilities. Experience. These qualities cannot be purchased. They cannot be borrowed. They must be formed through life's process. Possibilities. When you begin seeing God in everything, gratitude also becomes a natural part of your life. Possibilities. You become thankful not only for extraordinary blessings, but for ordinary moments. A conversation with a friend, a sunrise, a quiet evening, a lesson learned, a challenge overcome, a door opened at the right time. The more aware you become of God's presence, abilities, the more reasons you discover to be grateful. And gratitude has a remarkable effect on the human mind. Possibilities. It shifts attention away from constant dissatisfaction and toward appreciation. It reminds you that even in difficult seasons, abilities, there are still countless signs of grace surrounding you. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes meaningful. Possibilities. There is a profound difference between those two things. An easy life can still feel empty. When you train your mind to see God in everything, you stop dividing life into categories of good moments and bad moments. Instead, abilities. You begin to see every season as an opportunity for growth, learning, and deeper trust. You realize that God is not only present when miracles happen. Possibilities. He is present in the waiting, the preparation, the process, and the everyday details that often go unnoticed. Possibilities. The result is a life marked by peace rather than panic, confidence rather than fear, and purpose rather than confusion. You stop asking, possibilities, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what can God teach me through this? That single shift changes everything. Changes how you face challenges. It changes how you view your future. It changes how you view your future. Possibilities. It changes how you experience the presence of God in your daily life. Because once your mind is trained to recognize Him in everything, you begin to understand that He was there all along guiding, shaping, protecting, teaching, and working in ways far beyond what you could see. One of the most important truths a person can discover is that life is not determined solely by circumstances. It is profoundly shaped by perspective. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with entirely different conclusions. One may see only disappointment. and while the other sees an opportunity for growth. One may focus on what was lost, while the other focuses on what can still be gained. The situation remains the same, but the interpretation changes everything. This is why the condition of the mind is so important. Long before circumstances affect our future, they first pass through our perception. We are constantly interpreting what happens around us. We assign meaning to events, people, challenges, and opportunities. In many ways, the quality of our lives is determined not simply by what happens to us, but by what we believe those experiences mean. Many people live with a perspective that magnifies problems and minimizes possibilities. When difficulties arise, they immediately assume that something has gone wrong. When delays occur, they conclude that progress has stopped. When doors close, they believe their hopes have been destroyed. Their minds become trained to search for evidence that supports fear, discouragement, and uncertainty. The human mind naturally moves in the direction of its dominant thoughts. If you consistently focus on obstacles, obstacles begin to appear larger than they really are. If you constantly expect disappointment, you may start interpreting every challenge as proof that failure is inevitable. Over time, this way of thinking creates a cycle that drains confidence and weakens faith. But there is another way to live. There is a perspective that brings peace even when circumstances are uncertain. It begins when you train your mind to recognize that God is present and active in every area of life. Instead of seeing events as random, possibilities, you begin to see them as meaningful. Instead of assuming that every difficulty is a sign of defeat, possibilities, you begin to consider that challenges may contain lessons, opportunities, and divine purposes that are not immediately visible. Possibilities. This shift in perspective does not require you to ignore reality. It does not mean pretending that problems do not exist. Faith is not the denial of facts. Faith is the recognition that facts do not tell the entire story. Possibilities. There is often more happening beneath the surface than we can understand in the moment. Possibilities. Think about the moments in your life that once seemed confusing but later revealed a deeper purpose. Possibilities. Perhaps there was a missed opportunity that eventually protected you from making a costly mistake. Possibilities. Perhaps there was a painful setback that ultimately redirected you towards something better. At the time, possibilities. Those experiences may have felt disappointing. Looking back, however, possibilities. You can often see how they contributed to your growth and prepared you for what came next. Possibilities. This is why perspective matters so much. When you believe that God is involved in your journey, possibilities, you stop judging every situation solely by its immediate appearance. You begin to understand that today's challenge may become tomorrow's testimony. Possibilities. Today's delay may become tomorrow's preparation. Today's uncertainty may become tomorrow's evidence of divine guidance. As this perspective develops, possibilities. Fear begins to lose its control. Anxiety no longer dominates every decision. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, possibilities. What can I learn from this? Instead of becoming trapped by disappointment, you become open to possibility. Possibilities. Instead of focusing entirely on what you can see, you learn to trust what God may be accomplishing beyond your current understanding. Possibilities. The result is a life marked by greater peace, stronger faith, deeper gratitude. Possibilities. And a growing confidence that no circumstance is powerful enough to separate you from God's purpose. Your circumstances may change. Possibilities. From season to season, but a mind trained to see God at work remains steady because it is anchored in something far greater than temporary situations. Sort estes. One of the most difficult challenges in the life of faith is learning to trust when you cannot see immediate results. Human nature prefers certainty. Subabilities. We want answers to our questions, explanations for our struggles, and clear evidence that everything is moving in the right direction. Subabilities. We want to know why a prayer has not yet been answered, why a door has remained closed. Possibilities. Or why a season of waiting seems to continue far longer than expected. Absurdities. Yet some of the most important work God accomplishes in our lives happens beyond the limits of our understanding. Absurdities. There is a tendency to assume that if we cannot see God working, then perhaps He is not working at all. But silence is not absence. Possibilities. Delay is not abandonment. A lack of visible progress does not mean that nothing is happening. In fact, possibilities. Some of God's greatest works occur behind the scenes, in ways that remain invisible until the right moment. Think about a seed planted deep beneath the ground. For a period of time, there is no visible evidence of growth. The surface appears unchanged. To an impatient observer, it may seem as though nothing is happening. Yet beneath the soil, roots are forming, foundations are developing, and life is emerging in ways that cannot yet be seen. The absence of visible results does not mean the process has stopped. It simply means the process is taking place where human eyes cannot observe it. Many seasons of life operate in exactly the same way. There are times when God is preparing opportunities that have not yet appeared. There are moments when He is developing your character before entrusting you with greater responsibilities. There are periods when He is protecting you from situations that seem desirable but would ultimately lead you away from His best purpose for your life. The challenge is that we often judge God's activity based on immediate circumstances. If things are moving quickly, we feel confident. If progress slows down, we become discouraged. If obstacles appear, we begin questioning whether we are on the right path. Yet throughout history, some of the greatest moments of transformation were preceded by seasons of waiting, uncertainty, and apparent inactivity. Faith grows strongest not when everything is explained, but when trust remains steady despite unanswered questions. Anyone can believe when the path is obvious. Anyone can remain confident when every prayer appears to be answered immediately. But genuine spiritual maturity develops when you continue trusting God's wisdom even when you cannot fully understand His timing. There are moments in every person's life when circumstances seem to contradict what they hoped for. A relationship ends unexpectedly, a dream is delayed, an opportunity disappears. In those moments, it is easy to focus on what has been lost. It is easy to assume that disappointment is the final chapter of the story. Yet time often reveals a different reality. Possibilities. Many people can look back over their lives and identify situations that once felt devastating but later proved necessary. Possibilities. The opportunity that disappeared made room for a better one. The closed door prevented a costly mistake. Possibilities. The delay provided preparation that would later become essential. What initially seemed like rejection was actually redirection. Possibilities. This is why perspective is so important during difficult seasons. When you believe that God is actively involved in your life, possibilities, you begin to understand that not every closed door is a punishment, and not every delay is a denial. Possibilities. Sometimes God is arranging circumstances in ways that only make sense after enough time has passed. Possibilities. Trusting God's unseen work requires patience because His perspective extends far beyond the present moment. Possibilities. While we often focus on immediate comfort and short-term outcomes, God sees the entire journey. He possibilities. Understands consequences we cannot foresee, opportunities we cannot yet recognize, and purposes that have not fully unfolded. As a result, possibilities. Faith becomes more than believing when evidence is visible. It becomes the ability to remain confident when evidence is limited. Possibilities. It becomes the quiet assurance that even when circumstances seem confusing, God remains faithful to His purposes. Possibilities. It becomes the conviction that behind every season of waiting, every unanswered question, and every unexpected detour, possibilities, there is a wisdom greater than our own guiding the course of our lives.